Migrants.
We'll make off with your children.
Migrants.
And come after them in the night.
No.
It's a...
Migrants.
He's got fangs, razor-sharp ones.
We welcome migrants. We don't scapegoat them. Low wages, poor housing, poor public services are not the fault of migrants and people who've come here. They're political failure. Political failure. So we have to make the case for the benefits.
Slide to the right.
I think Conservatives have created this hostile environment, whether it's Windrush, whether it's the general response to immigration, or whether it's just the way the Home Office make their decisions. It's based on this idea that somebody's trying to cheat rather than actually based on an open, welcoming environment. I think we should welcome people wherever they come from, thank them for their contribution and see them as part of our families, our communities and our society.
Slide to the right.
The whole United Kingdom is better because of immigration, and I think, if I'm honest, the Labour Party's been a bit scared of making the positive case for immigration for quite a number of years, and I think we need to turn that round and broaden it out and make sure that people feel absolutely welcome here.
Slide to the right.
The previous government were running an open borders experiment.
Slide to the right.
A wave of unrest fueled by racist misinformation.
Slide to the right.
You have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse.
A bin set on fire by rioters with little regard for anyone inside the hotel.
Slide to the right.
I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration significantly.
This man's 3 children were on the sofa when the front window came in.
Slide to the right.
Taking back control is a Labour argument.
Slide to the right.
Muslim graves being vandalised in Burnley.
Resting places disturbed and desecrated.
Slide to the right.
We risk becoming an island of strangers.
Wow, that was really racist.
That was
Really racist.
How do you fight a resurgent far right? Historically, giving in to their rhetoric and trying to capture their voters has not worked. In fact, conceding to their framing only gives them more legitimacy and brings them closer to power.
Nigel Farage, UKIP party. This is a bit tricky, this one.
In England, the Reform UK party has won a parliamentary by-election in the northwest of the country by just 6 votes. It's also gained hundreds of new council seats, with party leader Nigel Farage warning that it's the beginning of the end of the Conservative Party.
The German Social Democrats gave in to the anti-communist fears of the right in the first half of the 20th century, to the point of even having their leaders offed in the dead of night by proto-fascist paramilitaries. All of this effort, all of these concessions, did not prevent the rise of the greatest evil of the 20th century. In fact, it facilitated it.
Der Kampf gegen den Marxismus wurde damals zum ersten Mal zu einem Kampfziel erhoben. Zeigen kann, dass ich die marxistischen Parteien vernichtete.
More recently, in France, Emmanuel Macron tried to fight against the rising popularity of Marine Le Pen's National Rally by trying to outdo her on his party's policy towards Muslims and immigrants, to the point where Marine Le Pen was confronted on national TV by Macron for not going far enough, making her look like the sensible and reasonable one. This has not stopped the slow but undeniable rise of National Rally. In the United States, the Democrats attempted to outdo the Republicans at their own game during the Biden administration, proposing a border bill that would have given in to some of Donald Trump's most horrific and inhumane ideas. The idea was to outmaneuver him. Instead, they accepted Donald Trump's framing. And if you decide to fight on cracking down on immigration, you can see ground and most likely defeat to the right. You will shed votes from those who are supposed to be your loyalists, your base. You will not gain those from the right. While you're doing this pandering, putting off everyone who's rightly disgusted by these moves, the people you are targeting will not believe that this is truly in your heart or your plans.
Kamala told a lot of lies tonight, and that was the amnesty bill that would allow millions of illegal immigrants into the country every single year. That was not a border security bill by any stretch of the imagination.
And even if they do, there's already a guy who promised to do the things you are now claiming that you stand for. 4 years earlier, you called him a racist for these policies, because he was, and these policies are, fundamentally harmful, especially to minorities. But by adopting his framing, you're advertising to the public that he won the argument, that he was right all along.
I'm gonna come.
So why would they then vote for you, and not the person you are signalling got it right the first time around, even when you know that he was not right, and you know the harm these policies will cause? Fighting for the votes of people further and further to your right will not work. Your base will leave. And as for the people you're targeting, they already have another option, one which shared their views long before you pretended to try and earn their votes. When presented with the choice, the people who want these policies, who want more cruel, more dehumanizing, and more racist policies at the heart of government, will not vote for diet fascism. They will vote fascist.
Enoch Powell was the most controversial of Tory politicians before Margaret Thatcher. His devotees claimed he was a man of unwavering principle. His detractors, that he represented the respectable face of gutter politics.
In April 1968, in a nation rocked by the rise of the National Front, British Conservative MP and Shadow Secretary of State for Defence, Enoch Powell, a man whose name alone gives off the same dark aura as an abandoned cemetery, gave a speech in Birmingham that would go down in history as one of the most hateful, racist, and inflammatory in British history. In this speech, he said migration risks Britain becoming completely unrecognisable, and proposed a mass crackdown, with migrants required to live in the country for an entire decade before they can even be considered for applying for settled status. Visas for people coming to work in the care services, massively understaffed and collapsing under the weight of an ageing population, were to be abolished. Universities were to be charged more for taking on international students, despite universities being one of the few remaining drivers of the British economy. He accused the opposition party of running an open borders experiment that he would be putting to an end, ending, in his own words, a squalid chapter for our politics, our economy, and our country, and vowed to take back control of our borders to prevent the UK becoming an island of strangers. He portrayed immigration as an unfathomable evil, a devil coming to destroy this country, writing a white paper on immigration timed to coincide with this vile rhetoric, reading, "Britain has become a one-nation experiment in open borders. The damage this has done to the country is incalculable. Public services and housing access have been placed under too much pressure. Our economy has been distorted by perverse incentives to import workers. It is a wound." The wound. Violent language swimming in a sea of lies, blaming immigration for the state of public services and housing rather than its true causes. Austerity, Thatcherite economics and its attacks on the state, rampant landlordism and the decline of council housing, and
you're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart. So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration significantly.
Wait, I just realised something. That wasn't Enoch Powell. That was Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and leader of the Labour Party, the nominally left-wing party of this godforsaken country, speaking on the 12th of May 2025, giving a speech that's rightly been compared to Enoch Powell's famously fascist Rivers of Blood speech, especially due to the almost identical line about an island of strangers, by members of his own party, much of the press, even Nigel Farage, and the people he needs to vote for him at the next election.
Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together.
They found themselves made strangers in their own country.
But Keir Starmer doesn't care about any of that, because currently, Reform UK, Britain's ascendant fascist party, led by I'm a Celebrity contestant and Have I Got News for You regular Nigel Farage, is leading in the polls, rising above 30% after a disastrous set of local elections for Labour, which in any sane world would have seen Keir Starmer ousted for turning a landslide victory into a total collapse of the party's vote share.
Why is that phrase so inflammatory to some people?
Because Enoch Powell, the racist Tory, his infamous Rivers of Blood speech talked about people feeling like strangers in their country. He meant white people strangers in their country. Now when he wants to accuse the Conservative Party or Reform of racism and bigotry, they will be able to turn around and say, what about you? What have you said?
This Reform lead is scary. I, naively, thought the party's vote share had reached its ceiling before the locals, when it was tied in the low 20s alongside Labour and the Tories. In retrospect, that was incredibly short-sighted. Those Tory voters will, with the collapse of the Conservative vote, go to Reform. And Starmer, being the worst man for the job at the worst possible time, will chase those Tory voters, further and further to the right. Voters that have never and will never go for him, because anyone who is in the Labour Party, no matter how Hitlerian their speeches get, is, in these voters' minds, basically Vladimir Ilyich Lenin himself.
My dad was a toolmaker.
My dad was a toolmaker.
He was skilled as a toolmaker.
So, let's try that again, shall we? With the correct references this time. In April 1968, Conservative MP Enoch Powell, a man with a name like a Saturday morning cartoon villain and with the politics to match, made a speech in the post-industrial city of Birmingham that would go down in history as one of the most hateful, racist, and inflammatory in British history, known colloquially as Rivers of Blood, based on a line towards the end of the speech where he misdiagnoses the reason for Rome falling as having too many immigrants, despite the 1,000 years the empire had existed while integrating immigrants before it stopped doing that. One line from Rivers of Blood should immediately demonstrate to you the vile substance of the speech, and the hate it channeled and sought to inspire to further action. Through terror, existential and urgent. Enoch Powell, claiming he was speaking the words of a concerned constituent, said infamously, "In this country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man." For those who took Powell at his word, this was an existential threat. And if you couldn't recognise that these were the lies of a fascist, well then, the only possible response to this, if you are dumb enough to believe them, was obvious and necessary. Violence.
It's 10:30 and this has been going on for hours now and there's no let-up, it's relentless. That was a police van burnt out. Up on the street that way, there's another police van on fire, and then down that way, I can see flames rising up too, with a lineup of police with their riot shields out, and things just constantly being thrown at them.
Violence such as we saw last year, when emboldened by rhetoric from politicians, including Keir Starmer, about the dangers of immigrants, refugees and Muslims, in Southport and in many towns and cities throughout the UK, far-right gangs took to the streets to start pogroms across the country. Drunk on rhetoric, mainly from Nigel Farage of the Reform Party and Tommy Robinson, to the other major parties parroting his rhetoric, to GB News and other propaganda outlets, to social media spreading fascist propaganda, gangs of the kind of people Starmer is trying to win over with his speech this week set fire to hotels housing asylum seekers, attacked mosques, and beat black and brown people in the streets. The sentiment that drives them is the same sentiment behind Powell's Rivers of Blood. A bloodthirsty xenophobia. That is, in its essence, a call to racist pogroms and a reorganisation of the state to match those of the fascist of the early 20th century. These people are Keir Starmer's new preferred audience. Or so he would like to think. But for them, he will never be enough. For some of them, even Farage is too soft. They cheer for racist policies, yes, on occasion, but even that will only whet their appetite. It won't bring them out to vote. They are radicalised far beyond even the most draconian and cruel policies. They will only settle for violence. In the aftermath of Powell's speech, protesters took to the streets demanding his warning be heeded, Meanwhile, newspapers condemned the speech's obvious appeal to racial hatred, a literal quote and an accurate description of both Powell's and Starmer's speeches. Due to this fallout, Powell was fired from the shadow cabinet. Starmer, as Labour leader, cannot be fired, but he can be challenged for leader, and he has yet to face a leadership challenge.
Could the Home Secretary explain why, in the introduction of this white paper, the language of Enoch Powell was used by the Prime Minister? There's been no speaking up about the enormous value of migration to this country that's kept our NHS running, our education service running, and so much more, and that there are already 130,000 vacancies in the care sector. Does anything in her white paper do anything to improve community relations or deal with the now labour shortage within the NHS and the care service? Or is it all about trying to please these people who unfortunately sit in front of me?
The Financial Times, describing the reaction of Starmer's party to his horrific speech, especially after months of anger from his colleagues following his relentless attacks on welfare and on trans and disabled people, wrote, Labour MP Sarah Owen said, "Chasing the tail of the right risks taking our country down a very dark path." Independent MP John McDonnell, formerly Labour's Shadow Chancellor, accused Starmer of using shockingly divisive language that reflected the sentiment of Enoch Powell, a former Conservative minister, in his famous Rivers of Blood speech in 1968. Powell said the impact of immigration had made white Britons feel strangers in their own country. Allies of Starmer said this was a coincidence, and that the Prime Minister's line was pretty different. Later they said, "We reject this framing. We can reject this framing," when presented with the obvious similarities. And the morning after, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, went on a media tour to explain that it wasn't at all like that, even though it was, while morning TV talk show hosts did more journalism than anyone has ever done towards the Labour Party, and Yvette Cooper just sat there laughing as if they hadn't just given a fascist fucking speech. So, are these two speeches similar? Let's see, shall we?
He spent 5 minutes sounding, to a lot of critics, like he could have been Nigel Farage. And the criticism is, he actually sounded like Enoch Powell. Did you know about this Island of Strangers line, and is it one that you agree with and would use?
Well, I think what you heard the Prime Minister say at the beginning of the clip that you played was to talk about the diverse nation, and he celebrated that.
I'm sorry, at the beginning, for 5 minutes of his speech, from the beginning of his speech, for 5 minutes, he did not talk about the benefits of immigration. And then he used this phrase, Island of Strangers. So I repeat the question for the third time. Is it a phrase you knew about, that you recognise, and that you would use?
No, but I think that's the problem. The immediate phrase that he said immediately before it was to talk about the diverse nation. And then he said, yeah, immigration needs to be controlled and managed. And I think there's a real challenge.
He said we risk becoming an island of strangers. And I just ask you again, did you know he was going to use that echo?
No, but the point is that this is...
And would you use that phrase?
I honestly think the point that he is making here is about...
It's a
migrant.
He's got fangs, razor sharp ones. It's a
migrant.
While to the immigrant, entry to this country was admission to privileges and opportunities eagerly sought, the impact upon the existing population was very different. For reasons with which they could not comprehend, and in pursuance of a decision by default, on which they were never consulted, they found themselves made strangers in their own country. Those are the words of Enoch Powell. These are the words of Keir Starmer. Let me put it this way. Nations depend on rules. Fair rules. Sometimes they are written down. Often they are not. But, either way, they give shape to our values, guide us towards our rights, of course, but also our responsibilities, the obligations we owe to each other.
Now, in a diverse nation like ours, and I celebrate that, these rules become even more important. Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together.
And that is the same speech in less pretentious language, making sure, however, to get in that very specific line about a country of strangers. Whoever wrote this speech put that in on purpose. There's no way not to. It's a very famous speech. This is a dog whistle. Or it would be if the entire speech wasn't the equivalent of a skinhead training his dog to bark at black and brown people specifically.
If you compare some of the rhetoric in the speech that we heard today with the speech that you mentioned, then it's not really a matter of opinion. There are some similarities, and we cannot be going down that path as a party. When the Prime Minister says that we're becoming an island of strangers, migrants aren't strangers. They're our families. They're my family. They're our friends. They're my constituents who I represent. And if we are becoming an island of strangers, and I think there is kind of fragmentation and division, then firstly, this isn't helping that, it's making it worse. But also, that's because of a decade and a half of austerity, because our community centres and youth groups have been shut down, our councils have been systematically underfunded. Let's start by giving cities like Nottingham our money back and taking money away from the super rich, people who got rich by gambling on the stock market and by exploiting tenants as corporate landlords, and let's give that money instead to our communities and to people who actually create wealth in this country, which is workers.
Another Labour MP who is apparently desperately searching around for his lost spine, Clive Lewis, last seen doing apologia for transphobia because he thinks people are being too mean to Labour for betraying trans people, said, "This kind of language doesn't just alienate communities. It drives people away from our country altogether. And if those at the top think this is a clever tactic to win another 5 years by rolling out the red carpet for Nigel Farage, they're mistaken. We are losing far more progressive voters than we are gaining from Reform UK." Nadia Whittome, of not portraying trans people but suspiciously staying in Labour despite everything, said, "The step up in anti-migrant rhetoric from the government is shameful and dangerous. Migrants are our neighbours, friends and family. To suggest that Britain risks becoming an island of strangers because of immigration mimics the scaremongering of the far right." If anyone is left in the Labour Party with a spine, which I doubt at this point, Keir Starmer will be toppled for this. Even with his local election disaster aside, and the fact that he's heading to 4th place in the polls, losing his left flank to the Greens and the Liberal Democrats, or simply people not voting, by ignoring this problem and constantly sprinting towards the furthest right position available, until presumably he will find himself joining the Waffen-SS. Starmer is a terrifying man in a sense, because he has no beliefs, no principles, despite what he says in speeches.
So yes, I believe in this.
He made numerous speeches and pledges about how immigration is a good thing, and how we need to make the positive case for immigration.
We welcome migrants. We don't scapegoat them. Low wages, poor housing, poor public services are not the fault of migrants and people who've come here. They're political failure.
Which is true. And yet now, he's giving speeches indistinguishable from and referencing Enoch Powell, and insisting in those speeches that that is what I believe.
So yes, I believe in this.
No one believes that. No one believes Starmer believes anything. He broke all of his pledges over and over again for years. First to the Labour Party when he was running for leader, then to the electorate at large. Once, twice, 3 times in Labour. To most of us, he embodies that famous Groucho Marx quote. "Those are my principles, and if you don't like them, well, I have others."
Trans rights are human rights, and I support the right to self-identification.
So you
And
don't
I
believe
think,
a trans woman is a woman?
Look, a woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. Make no mistake, this plan means migration will fall. That's a promise. But I want to be very clear on this. If we do need to take further steps, if we do need to do more to release pressure on housing and our public services, then mark my words, we will.
Poor housing, poor public services are not the fault of migrants and people who've come here. They're political failure. Political failure.
So yes, I believe in this.
He will take on any position at all if he thinks it has a chance of bringing him more power. And the worst part of all of this, for him, is that not only is he shedding any dignity he had and looking like a fucking monster, but it isn't working. It's doing the opposite. By accepting reform's framing, he's enabling reform. He's fighting on their territory. He's telling the country that Nigel Farage was right all along. And he wasn't. Starmer is doing advertising for reform at this point, and he doesn't even realise it. In the meantime, this will lead to violence. Violence against the most vulnerable people in our society. And many in the party are, despite the quotes I read earlier, unfortunately behind him on this. The right of the Labour Party has always had very questionable morals. Half of them are there precisely because they were evangelists for the Iraq War and think it was good, and stay under the guise of carrying on the legacy of Blair, by which they mean, well, the cruelty and the war. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, for example, was on TV on the 11th saying it was time to end care work recruitment from abroad, soft launching this horrible speech and its accompanying and equally horrifying white paper, warning that, as she put it, lower skilled workers would face visa crackdowns. Our care sector is massively understaffed. The work is thankless, pays absolutely shit all, and the hours are long and grueling. A lot of the people working these jobs are immigrants. A lot of other people just wouldn't do it, and even if they would, we have an aging population, so these jobs are only going to become more and more in demand over time. So how are you going to solve that? The obvious answer is immigration, but they've decided now that they want to appeal to racists, so it can't be solved.
Baroness Foster, would Keir Starmer have known the similarities between the language that he used in his speech today and the phrase used by Enoch Powell all those years ago?
Somebody did in Downing Street. I'm convinced of it. And Island of Strangers.
So it was deliberate.
Island of Strangers is a very particular form of words. It's almost a term of art. So where did it come from, and who was the person that said this should go into the speech?
The Reform Party seem to think that every unemployed person should have to work in care or be taken off benefits. So I'm assuming that Labour are just going to steal that too, despite the fact that people who don't have a job aren't just being unemployed for fun. They are looking and getting turned down. How many of these people are going to be qualified to do care work? Not as many as these weirdos might think. Certainly not enough to make up for the people that are already working in care you're planning to chase out the country to give the most racist people in Britain a hard-on at the cost of condemning your immortal soul to hell.
I was shocked. A Labour Prime Minister literally taking a quote from the Rivers of Blood speech, which Enoch Powell delivered in my hometown of Birmingham. I couldn't actually believe it. And I know that there are some efforts to pretend that this is just a coincidence, just something randomly picked out of air. But as a politician, I can tell you that you don't just get a speech on the day. It is drafted, I imagine, in Downing Street by numerous people. It is probed over, there are edits made, it is fact-checked. So for me, someone had Enoch Powell's speech on a PDF and was picking quotes, and that's how that phrase was in that speech, and that to me is highly concerning.
And for those of you who bang on about migrant crime to justify your hatred, know that the evidence does not support your narrative. Crime is down across the board historically, and immigrants commit less crime than people born in the countries you are crying about this from. This is a non-issue, whipped up by the far right to manufacture tensions between you and the black and brown people and immigrants you should be joining hands with, to take the power and wealth back from the billionaires that hoard the wealth that we also desperately need to be given back to the people to get the country fucking working. People like to talk about the white working class, but there's no reason to separate the white working class out except to target them with divisive racist rhetoric, designed to prevent them from fighting for their class interests. This is historically how this rhetoric is being used, sparking race riots in places like Liverpool to prevent the working class from rising up and actually fighting for their fucking interests.
These gangs spotted us. Before we knew what was happening, they were chasing us. So we ran like hell.
The majority of black and brown people, and the majority of immigrants, are working class. They are not oppressing you. You have the same material interests. You face similar problems, share many of the same hardships, and if you work together, you can actually solve your problems. You solve nothing by attacking people suffering the same, if not worse than you. You only prolong your own suffering by ensuring the people really benefiting from your misery stay safe in their glass towers, watching and laughing while the poor fight each other over false promises delivered by literal bankers like Nigel Farage. He and his ilk are not your friends. Do you remember 2008? And although I know people like you already don't believe Starmer when he tries to speak like your favourite far-right firebrand, he's not your friend either. Although he'd really like it if you thought otherwise.
How do you do, fellow
Conservatives?
For example, Starmer explicitly apes the Brexit slogan, "Take Back Control," in declaring his intention to pander to the same far-right that campaigned for the hardest Brexit possible, back when Starmer was pretending to be Mr. Remain for the sole purpose of stabbing Jeremy Corbyn in the back and preventing things from ever getting better for working people ever. But in saying, "We will deliver what you've asked for time and time again, and we will take back control of our borders," he just ends up sounding like a middle manager doing an impression of Nigel Farage or Boris Johnson. Even in his most evil moment yet, He sounds pathetic. How do you sound like a demon and a wet wipe at the same time? It'd be impressive if it wasn't so disgusting. In fact, Starmer quickly was outflanked to the left on this by Nigel bloody Farage.
Nigel Farage thinks it was a big mistake, he says, for the Prime Minister to echo the language of Enoch Powell. He talks about how it was a strategic mistake, and he told me the use of that language was not in Keir Starmer's interest. It's a catastrophic mistake that will divide the left for years to come.
Who condemned his speech and ended up looking like the more sensible option. Who could have predicted this except all of us? What's more, journalists quickly began asking who was responsible for putting the Enoch Powell line in. It's a very distinct line, and so memorable that someone must have known about it, and deliberately invoked Enoch Powell in this speech. Someone whose name I'm sure doesn't rhyme with Porgan McPweeny.
I think McPweeny has a very clear sense of who the party ought to be for, and it's not the people that it has been for over the last, say, 10 years.
How do you do, fellow
Conservatives?
We are a nation of immigrants. Even if you think you have no immigrant blood, you likely do. A huge wave of French and Belgian people fled to Britain in the 16th and 17th century.
It's estimated that 1 in 6 Britons today have Huguenot blood.
Many people from Eastern Europe, particularly Poles, both Catholic and Jewish, came to Britain.
My neighbor told me to run from his country, but since Brexit it's worse. Like beautiful balloon blow up and many hates come on people.
A massive amount of British people have at least some Irish connection, if not have Irish family outright.
And we move on now to a stormy question, that of immigration. Particularly immigration as far as the citizens of the Republic of Ireland are concerned.
And I gather that 80% of your labour is Irish. Now, why are they so attractive to you, or the jobs so attractive to them?
The only reason certain people don't bring this up, although many fascists do, is because these people are white, so it's less visibly obvious. But there have been massive South Asian, African, Caribbean, and Hong Kong populations in the UK long before some of your ancestors came. Very few people in the UK, even those who happen to have an entirely white family, a concept that is only a couple of centuries old, don't have some ancestor that was a Huguenot, or a Norman, a Saxon, a Roman. More recently, black and brown people have been a part of British society for centuries. And that's not even going into how the Roman Empire was so cosmopolitan there would have been black people in England long before that. But surprise, surprise, if you have a globe-spanning empire like Britain did for its sins, you're going to become a more cosmopolitan society. You can't just turn back time and prevent the horrors of the British Empire from coming to pass. I wish we could. But you can't just pretend that you haven't grown up in a country with a large and thriving South Asian community, West African community, Cantonese community, Polish community, Somali community, Greek Cypriot community, and so on. And these communities make Britain a better place to live in. There's a reason the people most terrified about immigration are the people who've encountered it the least. Some rural village in Buttfuckshire is much more likely to vote on anti-immigration rhetoric than a large city with a much more diverse population. Those of us who've grown up with a diverse city quite like it, actually. People are scared of what they don't understand, of what they don't know. But people get used to other people very quickly. And let's be honest, it's not like these fascists don't have Indian and Chinese food on the regular. Nigel Farage's entire profile's written about him going to a fucking curry house with a journalist. These people are hypocrites. If you want to be talking like only white people should live on this island, despite how fucking stupid that is, then I want to see you only ever eating boiled cabbage every meal and jellied eels. No spices, no fun. Now eat your eels and leave the rest of us alone. And that's not even getting into how recently Irish people were racialized in Britain. Hell, when I was growing up, discrimination against Polish people was very commonplace. There was no concept of these people being white, because they were not considered the in-group. And to a lot of racist people, the kind of people Starmer is trying to please here, they still aren't considered white. There was a massive surge in discrimination and harassment against Poles and other Eastern Europeans post-Brexit. And for what crime? Living near you while having an accent? Starmer wants to make people live in Britain for 10 years without being settled. That's a decade of anxiety, of never knowing what's next. Never feeling secure, safe, and like you can build a life, not being able to plan for your future, not receiving the help you need. Already now, refugees have no recourse to public funds. Despite what right-wingers will tell you, the most desperate and vulnerable people in our society receive absolutely no aid at all from the state, despite their circumstances, despite actually fucking needing it, precisely because of the kind of rhetoric Starmer is parroting. And the English language requirements? They might sound sensible to someone who has grown up speaking English, but if you really want to make this a thing that makes sense, this would have to be heavily subsidized, because language lessons are ridiculously expensive. And often the people Starmer is complaining about here come here dirt poor, then get paid peanuts. And then people have the nerve to complain they haven't had the time or the money to learn to speak English fluently. Can I just say too, that I don't think I've ever met an immigrant in the UK that didn't have better English language skills than any of the British expats that settled in southern Spain and Lanzarote. Hypocrites. And that's without even getting to the fact that Britain is an island of several native languages. If people are being punished for not knowing English, what about Welsh, Scots, Gaelic, Cornish? What then? Are you going to start punishing people in Northern Ireland for speaking Irish? If you're so pressed about people not speaking English, maybe you can start by ending the occupation. But no, Britain wants to reap all the rewards of colonialism without dealing with what it means to live in a post-colonial society. It wants immigrants to fill in gaps in the job market, already struggling and bound to struggle more with its aging populace, with more and more people every year aging out of work, without the people to replace them, but keep punishing immigrants for existing, attacking people for helping keep our society afloat, using language that will encourage pogroms, punishing these people for making our country a richer and more welcoming place to live, for making our home and becoming beloved members of our community, our neighbours, our friends. Because you'd rather literally paraphrase one of the most racist speeches in British history than admit that you know migrants make the country a better place to live. You've said it yourself. That they should be treasured, that migrants keep our country going, that they are our neighbours, our carers, our fucking family. And I know you know this because you fucking said it before. You said it many times before you decided you didn't believe anything you just said. And now you're trying to tell us you believe this? Forgive me for not believing you. I'm being fucking disgusted with you. Right now, I'm an immigrant. My partner was an immigrant when we were in the UK. Members of my family are immigrants. My friends are immigrants. My nurses that took care of me when I was sick and during surgeries, during moments where I could have bled out on the fucking floor, were immigrants. My neighbours, immigrants. My teachers, immigrants. The people who clean the streets and cook your food and deliver it right to your fucking door because you're too lazy to make some goddamn dinner yourself, immigrants. Why do you think all of these people deserve to suffer? Because they happen to be born on a different chunk of land to you? Can you articulate, without sounding like a massive fucking racist, why that makes sense? I will be waiting for your answer, and I imagine I'll be waiting a long bloody time, so I'll put the kettle on. And you, fucking think, for a second, about what your get the immigrants out rhetoric means. Mass deportations? Like Trump, yeah? How? Where to? How are you going to round them up? Where are you going to store them in the meantime? What are you going to do with them? Because in 1930s Germany, that was also the plan. Right now in America, they send them straight to El Salvador to a torture prison. Is that what you want? Or do you want the classic version, where they concentrate them in camps? And then when they don't leave the camps because they have nowhere to go, what do you do then? We know where that ended. So how is this going to be any different? You're going to rip people from their houses, separate them from their families and their communities. Because what, you 5 towns over don't like the idea of them existing? Well, too fucking bad. I don't like you, but I don't tell you to fuck off. And even all that aside, why do you think this will help you in any way? How will this solve any of the problems that are actually affecting you, that are making your life worse? Immigrants are not the people making your rent high. Landlords are. Immigrants aren't the reason you can't afford a house. It's Thatcherite governments over and over again that have taken away access to council housing. And landlords owning 20 fucking properties at a time to let that are the reason why housing's so fucking expensive, why you can't afford to live. Immigrants aren't the people keeping you from getting the help you need from the government. Austerity is. They've been defunding the sector for decades. Policies from Thatcher onwards, the fucking Conservatives and the neoliberal wing of the Labour Party that copied them. Not immigrants. Immigrants didn't make your wife stop having sex with you. Immigrants didn't make her stop loving you. Immigrants didn't make her leave. Immigrants didn't take your kids away. Immigrants didn't make the prices go up. Immigrants just came here, contributed to society, and became beloved parts of our fucking communities, our family, and our friends. Take away every single immigrant in the country, and you will still be fucking miserable. All of your problems will remain. In fact, they'll be worse, because there'll be fewer people to take care of you when you are old, fewer people to take care of you when you are sick, fewer neighbours to check in on you and make sure you're okay. You will remain miserable, lonely, and angry. You will have gotten everything that you ever wanted, and you will be absolutely fucking miserable. Chew on that. For the rest of you, thanks for watching, I guess. Hey, thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. If you liked it, why not like it, leave a comment, subscribe, tell your friends, share it around, give me some fucking money so I can keep doing this stuff and shouting at people in my room. Seriously, this is my job and I would like more money for it. If you can, because I am in overdraft hell and I have been for many years, but it would be nice to get out at some point. You can give me one-time donations on Coffee or PayPal, links below as always, or sign up to my Patreon or YouTube memberships. We can get early videos, access to the members-only Discord, my Nintendo Switch friend code, and exclusive content, such as interviews with some of your favourite YouTubers. Well, if you're some of the races I'm yelling at, and probably not your favourite YouTubers. I haven't interviewed Anthony Oliveira or any of those fucking idiots. But in addition to all that good stuff, you'll also get your name read out at the end, like Lee Wilkins, George Geddes, Kira Bino, Sparkling Heart, Corey, Matt, Jane, Mightier Than the Sword, Carolyn, Imogen Q, Luciano Frias Andrade. Oh, tripped over that one. Adam, Harry, Endog191, Cav, Quesadilla de Tortilla Azul, Liron, Adam Lees, Daniel Nevels, No Not That, Paul MB, Madeline Aguirre, Ben Murphy, Lex Phoenix, Enter Kurzitz, Mira D, Jacinia, Bob Ear, James W, Marvin Dorr, Foreign Guild, Bob the Builder, 5445554, Deborah Laboon, Vegas, Zilla Zathanium, Vince Whitaker, Amelia Lizette, Jason Haig, Frank McManus, Susan Foster, Helen Real, Sierra Whiskey, Arrestry, Alicat Gil, John N, Lloyd Luciente, Jason Cribbett, Sheila Dada, Ron Podolsky, Chum, Casual Observer, Manta Ray, Courtney, Burmack, Sleepy Slug, Philip, Brogger, Soma Piglet, Brain, Do, Sharty, Wolf, Greg, Noble, Deanna McMillan, Caroline Regalado, Alexandra Lily, Howard Lost, Nerida, Scarton, and Joey Gobble. Thank you. Don't be fucking racist. That shouldn't be a hard thing to do, but apparently for every British politician now, that's an impossible task. So, we live in hell. All right, goodbye.
The return of the sausages.